We're here to talk about Charles Leclerc, one of the most highly rated drivers in Formula One, but by his standards, a pretty underwhelming start to the season. Probably the second best Ferrari driver, especially over the past couple of races. Scott, what's going on with Leclerc? Why is he not on top form at the moment?
Yeah, it's primarily a qualifying issue, which is so rare for Charles, and actually something that he's addressed himself. This is something that he doesn't normally need to focus on or worry about, but he's had a bit of difficulty extracting his full performance and the full potential of the car over one lap in the last couple of Grand Prix in particular, and that has put him slightly on the back foot compared to teammate Carlos Sainz in terms of then getting the maximum result possible. And actually, it reminds me a little bit of that little spell he went through last year, which culminated in him missing out on the chance to win the Singapore Grand Prix, the only non-Red Bull win of the season. The fact Leclerc was just not quite as comfortable, didn't quite have everything together in the way that Sainz did over one lap, defined the outcome on Sunday. And that's basically what we've seen the last couple of Grand Prix here.
Yeah, ultimately it comes down to tyre preparation, as he's pointed out. Actually, the race stints have been really good. Remember, at Suzuka, he did that one stop and no one went further than him on the mediums. So it's getting the tyres in the window for that single lap in qualifying. And Australia and Suzuka actually had different challenges in that regard. Australia was more a graining limited one. Suzuka was more deg limited. And it's very, very easy to Suzuka, for example, use up too much of the tyre in that high-speed sweeps at the start of the lap. And Leclerc's just a little bit less adept when it comes to really, really difficult getting the tyres in the window challenges and doing things like making the flap adjusts as you go through qualifying to make sure the balance is always right. So he's just got a little bit confused. So ultimately, I would say that was what limited his qualifying pace in the past couple of races. It's not that he's got slower.
Extraordinary to think that a guy whose reputation is so much about his qualifying strength is now struggling in qualifying, especially when over the winter Ferrari made a big point with their development of saying we're putting the drivers at the centre of this, it's their feedback we're taking on board. This car is ostensibly meant to be easier to drive than last year's very tricky car, and yet Leclerc is struggling to get the most out of it. So why is that?
Well, I would just quickly say on that the main thing is that in the races, Leclerc is getting the most out of the car. So I think the objective of making the car easier to drive has been achieved, and that has been achieved for both drivers. It isn't just that Sainz is just all round more comfortable with this generation of Ferrari than its predecessors, and compared to Leclerc as well. It is that specific issue over one lap with a very good reason for it if it is in that dark arts of getting the tyre in the right window. Because the fact is, you look at Suzuka, for example, and Leclerc was saying the lap feels good, and he has done, as Ed was pointing out, enough laps in both of you have said he's a qualifying specialist to some degree. He knows what a good lap feels like, but he's driving at the limit of the grip that he feels is there, and that grip isn't quite at the peak it could be because of that tyre prep. So I think that what Ferrari has done with the car has been achieved, and Leclerc is benefiting from that, just not quite in qualifying at times.
Yeah, and ultimately those changes, the track surfaces are still uncontrolled by Ferrari. The tyres are still uncontrolled. So although you would think that a more balanced car would be a little bit easier to load up the tyres the way you want to, particularly on the prep laps, it's not really quite that simple. And I just think that when it comes to that particular element of the game, he's just not quite as good as Sainz. He's great in terms of the feel of what the tyres can give him. So I've got no doubt that, as Scott alluded to, at Suzuka, for example, he was driving to the grip that was there. It's just he wasn't able to prep the tyres to give that maximum grip, that best grip average across the full duration of the lap. That's the really difficult challenge. I think probably in terms of actually what he got out of the grip he had available, it was probably close to the maximum, but it's just he couldn't raise that grip ceiling by getting the tyres absolutely nailed and mastering all those trade-offs over the lap.
So should we be talking up Carlos Sainz a bit more in this conversation? He's only 4 points behind Leclerc in the championship, having missed a race, obviously, to have his appendix out. He's been ostensibly the faster Ferrari driver in the past couple of races, especially. Where has this improved form come from, Ed?
Well, certainly, yeah, he's been the stronger over the past couple of weekends, primarily because of the way qualifying's played out. But I don't think this is anything particularly different we're seeing from Sainz. He's had these spells regularly in their 4 years. This is their fourth season as teammates together. So it's just one of those periods. Scott referenced it earlier, that period after the summer break last year, Zandvoort and then Monza and Singapore. Sainz was outstanding and Leclerc struggled, but then the car changed a little bit and then Leclerc was back on top. So we do see these spells. If you look at the statistics, generally it's somewhere in the region of sort of 2/3, 1/3 in favour of Leclerc in terms of the performance. 64% of the time Leclerc qualifies ahead, 68% of the time he's the one who gets the front row. 60% of the race laps he's been ahead, 60% of the races he's finished ahead. But that means that Sainz is ahead quite a bit of the time, and that's what makes him such a strong teammate. So I don't actually think we're seeing anything different. The race performances from Leclerc have still been good. He was the stronger driver on the Bahrain weekend, but had that brake problem in the race. Saudi, we had no comparison. So this 2-weekend sample set, I don't think if we look at Australia or Suzuka, that's anything particularly unusual. We have seen 2 race sequences, 3 race sequences like this before. So Sainz is just doing what Carlos Sainz does very well.
Especially when you consider that even within those 2 weekends where Sainz has been better, I would argue that there's at least a decent amount of evidence to suggest that Leclerc was actually the better driver on the Sunday both times. In Melbourne, his final stint in particular, I think was very strong. In Suzuka, obviously Ed mentioned earlier that great management over that first stint to make an unorthodox strategy in the context of the rest of the field pretty much work. So Leclerc has been really strong still on Sundays. Obviously, Sainz has just bought himself track position and that advantage by a better weekend with the nuances of tyre prep and managing it in qualifying. So I agree with Ed, and in terms of the sort of underrated element, like, I do think Sainz is underrated, but that's not a reaction to the last couple of Grand Prix. I think that is just a broader feeling that I have. Some people within the F1 paddock who maybe don't pay as close attention as they should to the way that Sainz goes about his business and the way that Ferrari battle has played out. Some people outside of the F1 paddock who perhaps only see things that I really think that Sainz's season and a bit at Renault, for example, got alongside Nico Hülkenberg, has done a bit of damage to his rep in some people's eyes. But the rest of the time, he's done well against Max Verstappen. He's done well against Lando Norris. He's doing really well against Leclerc now. He's a very good driver. Is he on his absolute peak over a full season as effective as a driver as Leclerc is? I don't think so. But he's still performing at a very high level.
Well, and at the moment, they've done 3 races together and he's been ahead in 2 out of those 3, so he's having the better season. They've got the same number of wins, 3 each, since they became teammates at Ferrari. It seems like Sainz is getting stronger and stronger as a prospect, and yet in 2025 at the moment he's without a seat. Ferrari are dumping him for Lewis Hamilton. Have they maybe made a mistake in pulling the trigger and changing their driver lineup before having a chance to see what Sainz could do this season?
I don't think so. I think Sainz is performing at a high enough level that it required something extraordinary for him to not be Ferrari's priority for 25 and beyond. And that something extraordinary happened. They saw an opportunity to snatch Lewis Hamilton away from Mercedes, but not only an opportunity, they went absolutely guns blazing into that. They threw everything at it. They put everything on the table to get Hamilton, and that's the kind of thing that was needed to cost Sainz his Ferrari drive. So I still think Hamilton, if you take it as a global view, I think Hamilton is an upgrade. I think there's
even at the moment though with his current form.
Yeah, because I just think you can just see with what Mercedes is producing and how many times that goes wrong in terms of fixing everything. I just don't think you can get a good read from either Hamilton or George Russell in terms of what they've done at Mercedes over 2 and a bit seasons now in this rule set. Look at how different Russell's 2022 and 2023 seasons were in terms of the execution. So that's, Russell didn't get loads worse in 23 versus 2022. So I think it's really difficult to judge the drivers on what Mercedes has done. I think there are enough glimpses of what Hamilton's still capable of. Most of the Suzuka weekend, for example, it's still the blockbuster lineup for Ferrari. It's still an upgrade in terms of a bunch of off-track stuff. I don't think it's a downgrade on track. And ultimately, if you look at the current incumbent drivers, Leclerc is the one with higher potential than Sainz.